The first rays of the morning had not yet fallen. It was neither night nor day. But something, someone, was already awake. On the silent shores of Lake Natron, a shadow moved slowly across the cracked earth. The sky seemed to be fighting a forgotten battle between day and night. On the horizon, the pale orange of morning mingled with the bruises of night, and an undefinable tension hung in the air. It was neither completely dark nor completely light. And at that moment it was as if the world held its breath. The birds were silent. There wasn't even any wind. The air was heavy. It was full of waiting. As I stepped on the ground, a dry crunch could be heard through the cracks. It was as if each step opened a door to the past. Those steps were not like the wild walk nature is accustomed to. There was no hurry. There was no ambition, but there was a purpose. A direction. A commitment. That thing that moved forward was a lion, but not like a wild king, like a memory, like a scar, like a promise. Those who saw it first could only say, "Someone's coming." But those who looked carefully could tell he was going to. Someone. His broad shoulders seemed to carry the weight of time. His mane vibrated even in the windless air in the gray light of the morning, competing with the silence of nature in that strange moment when something was trying to move but didn't dare yet. His nose stretched towards the horizon. But his gaze, not into space. It was on a point that he was focused on, that invisible spot that only he knew. He came to every day, that he did this every morning. The same time, with the same steps, that he came to the same place, and he just, Saturday, and he'd been doing it for years. No one chased him, fed him, or approached him, but he still comes. And why? For a hunt? No, 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 for a battle. No, 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 no. He was just waiting, but who, waiting for what? These may be questions for someone seeing it for the first time. But for the Lakeside Park Rangers, it has become a routine. Every morning, around 5:30 a.m., with the gray morning light rising in the east, the lion appears. He approaches silently. He sits down and stares, but he focuses only on one place, that small spot where the earth cracks and the salt forms a thick layer, empty and silent, and yet, full for him. If you knew that a friend whose life you saved years ago was still waiting for you, even though you made no promises, how would you feel? This story, which begins on the shore of a lake, is not only the story of a lion, but of all of us. It is a story of loyalty, gratitude, and of friendships that are never forgotten. This is a story of an animal acting with its heart, not its instincts, the wordless form of a thank you, the silent echo of a goodbye. And that lion, he came again today, again at the earliest hour of the morning, again alone, and again by the same stone. But something was different this morning. The wind had changed direction, the sky was unusually clear, and someone got out of a parked car on the side of the dusty road. Yes, someone else came today. Tendo. If an animal hasn't forgotten you for years, can you forget it? As the morning mist of Lake Natron slowly dissipated, the giant body sitting motionless on the ground summoned the ghost of the past. The lion fixed his tired but determined gaze on the cracked earth he could not break. Something had once happened here, something such that, no matter how much time had passed, its traces had not been erased. That morning, park officials were whispering over the radio. He's here again. He's alone. He's not moving at all. Most of them had gotten used to the sight. And yet everyone remained silent. Because some part of them believed that this scene was untouchable. It was like interfering, like betraying a memory. And that morning, Tendo arrived. When he pulled his car to the side of the dusty road, he didn't turn off the engine. He looked out the window. He rubbed his eyes. And he took a deep breath. In front of him, in that moment when the morning light hesitated between gray and yellow, right next to the stone, there was a lion waiting. They didn't make eye contact, not yet. Tendo opened the door quietly. Without getting out of the car, he just sat on the floor. He put his hands on his knees and waited. The sky was gradually clearing, the birds were finally waking up with their feeble chirping, but an intense silence still hung between them. In this silence there was everything that a life saved, a promise made, and a loyalty kept. 3 years ago, in this very place, a young lion was found wounded. His eyes were bright then. He was weak, but the fire of life had not gone out in him. Tendo approached him, cut the wire trap, and sat with him for hours. At first the lion did not run away. But he didn't touch it either. He just looked at him as if to ask, "Why are you helping?" Their first contact was silence, and that silence turned into an agreement. Tendo brought him meat every morning. Sometimes he carried water. Sometimes he just sat beside her, without speaking, without pushing, just being there. One of those days, Tendo took out an old piece of paper from his pocket that he wrote a few words on it. "There was no fear in your eyes today. If one day we meet again, let's talk only with your eyes." But he could never give her the note. Because one morning, the lion was gone. He was free, healthy, and back to his own life. Now, 3 years later, right in front of that stone, they met again, but this time there was no need for words, because everything was in the eyes. Tendo bowed his head slightly. He tried to suppress the feeling growing inside him. He looked at him without blinking. After a moment, the lion turned his head, slowly, almost ceremoniously. He circled the stone, then he turned around, and walked directly to where Tendo was. His steps were heavy, the earth trembled slightly. With each step, another memory from the past seemed to come to life. At one point he stopped. There were a few meters between the two of them, and at that moment, the lion lowered his head. There was no roar. No threat, just surrender, and the warmth of familiarity. Tendo held his breath. His eyes filled. But he didn't shed a tear. Because this was not a moment to be sad, this was a promise kept. That if an animal never forgot you because you were there for it in the most difficult moment of its life, could you ever forget him? That morning, in the cracked earth of Lake Natron, a lion and a man were reunited beyond words, but the story didn't end there. There was movement. The lion slowly approached Tendo. He rested his head on his shoulder. A momentary touch, but a moment of a lifetime. The paw brushed lightly against Tendo's back, and then, quietly, it withdrew. Tendo took a deep breath. He closed his eyes, and in his heart, he whispered a thank you he couldn't put into words. The wind eased on the lakeshore. The birds began to sing a little more audaciously. And the sun reflected gently through the morning mist on the waters of Lake Natron. The lion took another step back. Then another step. Tendo said nothing, because he knew, this was not goodbye. It was a thank you. The lion turned. He turned his head once more to where the stone had been, and silently disappeared into the cracked earth by the lake. Tendo stayed where he was sitting for a while. He reached into his pocket. He took out the yellowed note. He gently smoothed the wrinkled, faded paper, and murmured, "If one day we meet again, let's talk only with your eyes." And they talked. In silence, but everything had been said. Do you think every loyalty needs words? Share your thoughts in the comments, because loyalty is often heard loudest in the quietest moments. The sky was slowly clearing, but the air by the lake was still heavy. The earth seemed to breathe, and just then, something unexpected happened. When Tendo looked up, he noticed a second shadow in the distance. Thin, swift and stealthy. Another lion, but this one was different, younger, more ferocious. His eyes hungry, his steps aggressive. Tendo's heart stopped for a moment. That first lion, his friend, had not yet turned his back on him, but the approaching young lion came with jealousy, with anger. Was a new king being born in this land, or was it just a challenge? Tendo did not move. He watched, even holding his breath. The first lion, his friend, turned his head. They locked eyes, and a decision was made. Without a sound, he took a single step forward, toward the newcomer, slowly, but menacing. There was a weariness in his body, but the dignity of his stance was still unshakable. The two lions locked eyes, tension cut through the air. At any moment a roar could be heard. Tendo did not stand up. He knew, this was not his battle, this was a final battle, fought in his own language of loyalty and gratitude. The young lion took another step. He circled around the first lion. They came nose to nose, and then something unexpected happened. The young lion bowed his head slightly. As if in respect. As if to say, "I have much to learn from you on this land." The first lion turned his head back to Tendo. There was peace in his gaze now. His mission was accomplished, and at that moment, a light breeze blew. The smell of salt filled the air. The cracked earth of Lake Natron sealed the footprints of the two lions forever. Tendo took a deep breath, and thought, loyalty is silent, but the world makes its voice heard. And remember, sometimes the quietest steps leave the biggest echoes. The sun was now fully up. The cracked surface of the lake glowed in the light as if on fire. The lions were gone. Tendo was left alone, but this loneliness was not like abandonment. It was the silence that follows a completed story. He didn't go back to his car. He walked to the stone that no one had touched for years was wet with morning dew. There was something new on it. A feather. A claw mark, and right next to it, something else scratched in the dirt, something Tendo thought he had dropped from his pocket years ago, that old, yellowed note, but this time, there was a difference. A sentence had been added to the back of the note. As if written in dried mud, finger thick, you remembered. You came. Tendo picked up the note. He held it in his palm for a while. He raised his eyes to the sky, and smiled, then, without saying a word to anyone, he quietly left, but after that day, no one set foot around the stone by the lake. A sign was put up, Stone of Silence, for the unforgotten, and years later, a group of tourists visiting the area noticed something interesting in the early morning. There were 3 different marks on the ground, a pair of lion claws, a man's boot print, and a small foot, like a child's name, but there was no one there. Does a story really end? Leave a mark on our hearts. Tell us in the comments, why do you think this lion came back, and most importantly, do you think we humans can be as loyal as animals?